Welcome to That's Joy, the podcast. I'm your host, Cece Calbanero, and I'll be sharing stories of miracles, God moments, and unpacking the truth behind what joy truly means. My friend, when God gives you a direct call on your life, be sure to answer it. Here's to answering my call together. Hello, friends. Welcome back to That's Joy, the podcast. I'm your host, Cece, and I got some fire for you today. It's going to be a short one, a solo one, and if you're new around here, you might not know, we kick off every episode with a little joyful noise. Joyful noise is just our version of good news. And today, I want to start off with reading a Apple review from one of y'all. This is written in from Angelica, and it reads, "So blessed to have found Cece. 5 stars. I've been listening since day one, and let me tell you, it keeps getting better and better. You can literally feel God speak through Cece. When I listen, it actually feels like I'm in the room with her, like 2 BFFs chatting about life and God. So happy to have found Cece and her podcast." I am so grateful, y'all. I can't say it enough for every single review because I know what it means. It means you stopped after the end of a certain podcast. You paused in the middle of a podcast to literally take the time to go the extra mile and write in how the podcast is impacting you. And any amount of quote unquote, this extra mile for me means so much. I think if extra mile, I say that in quotations because it isn't a real thing. It's just a thought that I've curated as you doing more than what you have to do for someone, right? I think about this in friendships and relationships. And when people go the extra mile for me, I never want to take that lightly because it's things that they didn't have to do. And so if you've written a podcast review already, you didn't have to do that, but thank you. And if it's on your heart or it's been on your to-do list to do it, thank you. I can't wait to read yours soon. I read all of these, and there are moments where a grand slew of them come in at a time, and I find myself in a coffee shop literally shedding tears. I mean, this happened last week, a couple weeks ago, where I read the last couple in that came through, and I just was undone by your goodness and your just faithfulness to this podcast and to how you show up to That's Joy. I don't take it lightly. So thank you. Now, let's dive into today's topic, which is all about the preparation season. And I want to forewarn you now, I am fresh off of a podcast recording day, which also happens to be my joyful noise. I got the opportunity to sit in the live recording seats for one of Lisa Harper's Bible studies that will come out with Right Now Media covering the book of Psalms. And so I feel like I have been poured into all day. Therefore, my cup is now overflowing. And from the very top of the day, when I woke up at 6, I am sifting through the book Draw the Circle Again by Mark Batterson, and it's a 40-day prayer challenge. And I did this a couple years back with some girlfriends, and it quite literally transformed the trajectory of my life, that I see so much of myself walking into the prayers that I once circled 2 years ago that I'm actually walking in today. But I wanted to sift through it because I found myself not in necessarily a drought season, but if you're been hanging around here for a while, you know that I will always operate from the seat of transparency. And let's just say that the last couple months haven't been necessarily the easiest. I put a post up today actually talking about the ability to feel and how God allows us to feel things. I mean, what a blessing that we are humans who get to feel, I don't think trees or animals feel in the way in the depths that humans do. And I think it's all strategic and all the Lord. And I'm so grateful for that ability. In the same breath, it means experiencing the opposites of happiness. I feel like I've had several moments of sadness and confusion and sometimes tokens of doubt, if I'm being completely honest with y'all. And so I wanted to pick this book up again to just be, revived in a way where I take control of what I can control And that's my belief. And that's increasing my level of faith again. And I know what this book did for me before. And so I picked it up with another intention of, okay, God, I want to trust you and I want to draw circles around the things that you're calling me to and genuinely believe in them. So I want to read a little excerpt from this book on page 45. It reads, "Sometimes we're afraid of praying for miracles because we're afraid that God won't answer. But the answer isn't up to us. We never know if the answer will be yes, no, or not yet. But the answer isn't up to us. It's not our job to answer. It's our job to ask. And Jesus exhorts us to ask. It says in Matthew, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. These three words, ask, seek, and knock, are present imperative verbs. In other words, they aren't something we do once. They are actions that are repeated over and over and over again. Keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking, and I might add, keep circling. Then the little token after this day's chapter ends reads, the greatest strategy in life is the prayers that go unanswered simply because they go unasked. I wanted to read this with y'all today because it came up again while I was at this live recording. Sweet Sarah Hollis, she's one of my good friends. She's actually on the podcast as well. Look up her very episode. She is a powerhouse of a woman. I'm talking spirit-filled. And she actually lined up an opportunity for me to further expand That's Joy and just what I believe God is doing. And I'll share more as more unfolds, but it feels not quite ready to share yet. But all that to say, I was sharing with her and not even asking, but she was the one who went the extra mile to ask a friend of a friend for this specific opportunity. And it reminded me so much of this exact scripture in Matthew chapter 7, verse 7 through 12. I mean, it's all about the ask and the seeking and the knocking. And I think as Christians, sometimes we shy away from this very action because we're sitting in a seat of complacency. We're sitting in a seat of quote unquote what we believe is contentment, when really if we're searching our hearts enough, if we're allowing the Holy Spirit to search our hearts enough, we know that that isn't actually contentment. It's actually a seat of complacency. And I'm not speaking to everyone because I do believe that a lot of people, a handful of people, are content with their lives. If that's you, I'm not challenging you in this moment. But if you have a stirring in your heart, when I say that sentence, when you turn it back 1 minute right now and listen back to that and feel a stirring in your heart that you know that you're not operating from a seat of contentment, you are operating from a seat of complacency, then friend, I am talking directly to you. Because I want to increase our faith altogether. I want to start believing again, believing that God can do it. And you know what? I spent some time in New York over the last week, and gosh, trips and travel just teach me so much. I feel like God just completely gives me so many golden nuggets throughout travel that I get to experience and run with. I mean, even the idea of New York alone, I haven't been to New York City in the summer months before, but this was my first time when it was warmer out, and I've come to the realization that I am a winter New York summer girly, specifically a Christmas season New York girly. So if I do travel back again, it will be during that time. But man, this city, y'all, there's so much to learn within it. I was honestly just completely taken back at the amount of people that reside in such a small acre space of the world, but two, just the magnitude of possibilities painted within these given miles, within this given radius, and how much people in this city simply believed that they can do something. whether that's a career in finance or pursuing a career in acting or in culinary. I mean, you name it. We're talking state of the art, best of the best. These people are moving to this city for an opportunity, right? What breaks my heart is that I think a lot, and I don't have the numbers here, so someone, if I have a researcher who's listening to this who wants to text me what those numbers are, I get curious on the population of Christians in this city, the population of believers in this city. And as I traveled back, I had small conversations here and there with people who reside in Nashville, a very Christian populated city. And it's no one in particular, but it made me realize how much people of the world have more faith and more belief than some people in the church. And I'm not speaking to everyone, and if I'm stepping on your toes, take that up with the Lord, because I'm not speaking directly to anyone here. What I am saying is that I can likely have you agree that you have met someone who isn't fully immersed with Jesus, who just has a crazy belief, a crazy faith, if you will, like Mike Todd always says, like that crazy faith, believing that God can do anything. God is a miracle working God. He is magnificent. He is bigger than anything that we could ever think up in our minds, right? I'm talking about that big kind of God. For some reason, for some way, we've gotten to a place where some people who call themselves Christians don't have that level and that intensity of belief. And I want to challenge us all together. In fact, I want to challenge myself in this very moment as these words come out of my mouth. I want to challenge myself in saying, Cece, will you believe more? Will you believe that I can do it? And it's not saying, y'all, I don't want you to hear this episode and hear this moment and think, oh my gosh, she thinks bigger is better and more is better, because that's not it. If you read my Instagram post, if you know my heart, you know that that's not what I'm believing. I am believing that God can do more than what we ever think. And that doesn't necessarily mean numerical in the sense of followers or numerical in the sense of financial gain. What I truly believe is like, will you believe that more people will come to heaven through your efforts, through the gifts that God has given you? Because that's the ultimate why, friends. I mean, so much of this podcast, right? Like, I am so grateful that it reaches believers, but I'm more grateful if it lands in the hands of someone who does not believe yet, but finds an episode from That's Joy, listens to the very end of it, and gets moved simply because they were invited to know Jesus. That's what fires me up. And it leads me so much into this idea of a preparation season. There was a Pastor Tim Timberlake, recently visited the Belonging Co., and I had the privilege of tuning in and sitting in on not just one of the services, but two. We have Sunday services at 9 and 11, and then Tuesday evening services at 7:30. I'll typically serve on a Tuesday night once a month. So if you're ever there, shout out, shoot me a DM. But I was specifically sitting down in the Tuesday night service, moved beyond belief. I mean, he talked specifically to this preparation season. And if you have 40 minutes of time this week to plug into this episode, I believe they're already posted on Belonging's YouTube channel, but you will not regret it. There was a line that he shared that captivated me, and it says, "You don't get what you deserve, you get what you prepare for." You don't get what you deserve, you get what you prepare for. And I fully realize, friends, I hope you fully realize in this moment that there are 5 months left in the year. There are 5 months left in the year. And I don't know why I'm getting emotional, but I am. And I think it's just a Holy Spirit moment coming over me. But I think that there are things that you set out to do in January. And there are some of y'all who are feeling discouraged in this moment. There are some of y'all who are throwing in the towel in this moment. There are some of y'all who are lacking the belief and lacking the faith that God could do more in 5 months than he's done in the last 6. And I want to challenge us, friends. I want us to believe that he can do it not only in 5, but in 1. Friends, he can do more with our 90% than with all of our 100%, right? He can do more with our 1%. Like, God can do more than anything that we could ever ask, think, or imagine. And I want to challenge us to take this next season, these next 5 months, no matter what the actual plan is. We won't know the actual plan, right? I think so much we end up sitting back as believers because we're like, well, God will make a way. God will do it. And faith without works is dead. So we got to work. We can't just have the faith piece. And that's what I want to talk about when we find ourselves in these preparation seasons, right? I think preparation season to me is the waiting season. And a lot of us just paint it as the waiting because it's easier. We don't have to do anything in a waiting room. We just sit there, right? In a preparation room, you think about preparing anything. Like, let's talk a bakery. I was in New York, like I said, and my boyfriend and I went to so many like cookie spots and croissant spots and bakeries, if you will. And there are preparation rooms that tend to these baked goods, and they have to be at work pretty much at all times. I'm talking some of these croissants, they take days on days to make. And so there are a ton of different steps that take place before you take that scrumptious piece of goodness and put it in your mouth, right? That the preparation room is busy, like busy in the sense of order, not busy in the sense of nonsense. Waiting rooms, think about a waiting room in a hospital. Waiting rooms are different. Waiting rooms, you can't do anything but sit there and be. And sometimes you can pick up a magazine from 6 years back, or you can scroll mindlessly on your cell phone, but you're not necessarily using your hands and feet for work. Some of y'all have put on the lens and picked up the lens that says and sees, well, I'm just going to wait these next 5 months, and maybe next year I'll achieve more at this point in the year than I did this year. And I'm just going to wait on God. This is my waiting season. Not knowing that we have the option to look through the lens that says and sees these next 5 months, I'm going to view as a preparation season. I'm going to utilize every moment that God gives me, every day that God allows me to wake up and see another day, as an opportunity to pick up a tool that I could not have picked up before, where I am going to use that tool in the moment of when God calls me to the very thing that I know He is calling me to. And friends, so many of y'all who listen to That's Joy have felt the tug, have felt the very ring that I always talk about, where God is calling you to do something and you know what that thing is, but my goodness, fear is holding you back. Fear is holding you back from stepping into that very thing that you know God is calling you to. I want to speak to you, because we can't view the remainder of the year as this moment where we're going to sit back. We have to pick up every tool that the Lord has allowed us to pick up in this season and then be ready to run with it, friends. I think about a house and building, because my word for the year is build. And during a preparation season, when people are thinking about building up a building, right? There are so many different steps that take place where teams upon teams have to dream up all that is needed in order to build out the building that they have intended. And some people do it wrong and build incorrectly, and things fall and things break and buildings don't stand to the potential that they are, which is terrifying and tragic, but it happens, right? And then in other cases, buildings that are built up that have a strong foundation, that have a good floor plan and good teams, end up staying up for years and years and years on end. I think about all these buildings in New York as I was walking up and down the streets, and how many of them have been up and standing for hundreds of years. And although from the outside they look somewhat crumbly compared to the newer buildings, the foundation was set so strongly. I get curious what it would look like if we viewed our works in that same way. That said, you know what, God, instead of sitting back and waiting, I'm going to use this preparation season. And if you want me to be consistent now, I will say yes. If you want me to read that book that I felt that I should be reading, but I haven't yet, now I want to read that book. If you are calling me to start the podcast and start writing out the scripts and start recording, even though I don't even know how, God, I want to say yes and just press the button record. Whatever it is for you, friends, I want you to utilize this season to allow the equipping to take place. My friend Sarah today, she even talked about the power of asking, bringing it back to what Draw the Circle so beautifully said. Sarah was like, it's not going to happen because I didn't ask. She said something along those lines, and she's incredibly hilarious, and her best friend Anaka and her have a podcast. Y'all have to plug into it. It's called Inside the Group Chat. But anyways, we kept joking because it was funny how she said it, but it's just so true. I'm going to receive my blessing because I'm going to ask. And I'm not going to not receive it because I didn't ask. And so much of the ask is an action thing too. Like in these moments of preparation, are we conversing with God, having a conversation with God in the moments where it's hard, in the moments where we don't know what to do exactly next? Are we inviting him in and asking him? And friends, again, I'm speaking in a mirror. I'm asking myself these same questions. Am I pulling God into as many moments as I can, not just a few? Because I can get better at this myself. And maybe you're hearing this and you're like, man, me too, Cece, me too. Then let's lock arms together and decide that this is going to be the moment that changes how we view not just the rest of this year, but the rest of our lives. I want to give it everything that we've got. I want to say that I spent no time in a waiting season because there are miracles happening in the moments that I was living, and I was catching them in the moment. So often we have rose-colored glasses and we think the past was so much better, but really we just have a distorted vision of the past because of, I think, tactics of the enemy that we're allowing to prosper to some degree. And we have to put that underneath our foot and saying, I'm not going to miss the miracles that God has for me today. And I'm going to put in the work today. And I'm going to believe and have faith today, because today, if it was all that I have, I want to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can, leaving the rest up to God, but ensuring that I am focusing and doing all that I can control. Because friends, there are things that you can control, and I don't want us to miss it. I don't want us to miss it. Let's be the people that say yes to the preparation season and listen to every single nudge on our hearts and take the action boldly. You're worth it. You're worth it. You're worth it. You're worth it. And if there, my goodness, is a part of this episode that you just want to hear more about, I want to know what that is. Seriously, shoot me a text to 615-813-4813 so I could hear from you. It's really me on the other end that texts y'all back. I also want to say that there are still sweatshirts available, y'all. So if you want to get a limited edition That's Joy collection sweatshirt that's all over our Instagram page, then be sure to head to the show notes, click on the link, and purchase yours. I think we have less than 20 available, and there are thousands of y'all who plug into this podcast. So if you are thinking about it, if you've been thinking about it, I will not be doing a restock on That's Joy collection, and there will be a new collection someday. I don't know when. So if you want merch, now is your time to snag it. I will say too, things do run a bit oversized, so just know that as well. There are small and mediums left, but they are oversized, and so grab them while you can. If you want to follow me on social, you can follow me at CCALBONERO on Insta and on TikTok, and you can follow That's Joy the Podcast on both of those as well. If you have not yet subscribed, rated, or left a review, like I said at the top of the episode, it'd mean the world. Please take the time to go do that. It does wonders for podcasters. So not just for me, but any podcast that you listen into, go do that very thing for them too. Friends, I'll never leave an episode without saying, if you have even the smallest desire to meet the creator of the universe, or if you've already been saved but you're not really free, I want to invite you to sit at the table of plenty with me and so many others. I'm telling you, there's an abundance here. There's an overflow here, and there's so much joy here. I'm here to tell you that God's for you. All you have to do is invite him into your heart right now. He's waiting for you. He wants to meet with you. I'm just so proud of you. If you just made this decision, I'd love to know you. Shoot me a text to that number in the show notes so I could pray for you. I love you. God loves you. And until next time, I'll chat with y'all next time. Thank you so much for being here.